Welcome back to Creating a Universe, where we're discussing the various elements that go into creating a believable and immersive world for your story. Today, we're going to be talking about the world itself, the places and structures that your characters will inhabit and interact with. First off is setting a definition for the world itself. Is your story historical fiction set on Earth, or is it fantasy set on a different planet? Does it resemble Earth, or is it detached from any concept of normal? For example, in the book Shadow of the Conqueror by Shad M. Brooks, or Shadiversary as some may know him better, rather than having a conventional planet, the world consists of floating continents. Or is it science fiction where the entire population of the story lives on a massive ship traveling through space? It's up to the writer to find out how the inhabitants of this world navigate it. Whether you're writing a fantasy novel set in a made-up world or a science fiction story set somewhere in the future, the world you create should be rich and detailed. It should have its own history, cultures, and laws that your characters are bound by. This doesn't have to be a literal map, but you should have a clear understanding of the geography and the locations of your story. If you have no idea what these places look like, then how will you describe them to your audience? It's also important to start considering what kind of societies and cultures will inhabit your world. I stress the word consider here because in the early stages, those ideas won't just come into your head out of nowhere. That takes time. Still, it's good to start developing those ideas of where different civilizations and cultures originate from and where they're placed in your world. That will ensure that when you get there, your descriptions of these places are rich and diverse. Maybe there's a town and its symbol is a fox, so its colors would be orange, white, and brown. It would be normal to see that symbolism throughout the whole town. Everything from the structure and design of the buildings to the style of clothing that the population wears. Overall, races and cultures are a whole different topic of their own, but like I said, it's important to start considering the foundation of what those will become later on. It's important to start setting the foundation for what those ideas will become because depending on the different races and species and their cultures and beliefs and how they interact with each other will shape the world around them. Similarly, you'll want to start considering what forms of government exist in these different areas because they too will change the way the world looks in that area. Is there one or are there multiple? Do they work together or do they contradict each other, etc.? You're only trying to get a rough idea that we can come back to later. Now, and maybe most importantly, why do people live where they live? You don't need to come up with some unspoken backstory for why every background character lives in a certain town. You don't even necessarily need to know where all of the main characters are from if that information doesn't lend anything to the story. But still, in general, why do people live where they live? Why do they live in a floating city? Are they trying to escape something below? Back to the example of the science fiction spaceship setting. Is it a colonist ship taking people to populate a new planet? If so, are they leaving because Earth is dying? Or is there a large-scale war? Or maybe humankind is advancing so fast they simply need to expand. Does a group of knights live in a certain abandoned castle because they're outcasts from society and simply need a place to stay? Questions like this are important for people to get an immediate idea of the story setting without the author really needing to say much. Finally, it's important to remember that your world should be consistent. Everything from societal law to the laws of physics, your characters need to abide by those or face repercussions if they break them. If you create a world with magic, for example, the magic may be a mystery to the audience with little clues dropped throughout the story on how it actually functions, but the entire time those rules should be clear and consistent to the writer. Otherwise, your final product will just be a piece of paper, and it's easy to poke holes through a piece of paper. If you're confused about anything in your book, it's likely it'll come across that way to the readers. By keeping your world consistent, you'll avoid confusing or frustrating your readers, and instead you'll create a world that feels real and lived in, full of landmarks, details, and character of its own. And that's going to be it for this episode of Creating a Universe. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. I'm going to be collecting questions throughout the series and answering as many as I can at the end. And remember, there are such things as stupid questions, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be answered. If you found this helpful, give the video a like and consider subscribing. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.